health with primary health care. He has worked at WHO for over 2 decades and retired as outgoing director of the Department of Data and Analytics. He was a senior advisor to the Division of Data Analytics and Delivery for Impact and coordinated several large-scale international projects. He served NIMHANS as faculty for 17 years, having completed his MD in psychiatry in 1982. He is listed by Web of Science among the world's most cited researchers. A very warm welcome to you, sir. I now invite Professor Satish Chandra, former Director, Vice Chancellor, NIMHANS from 2010 to 2016, former Senior Professor, Department of Neurology, after having completed DM Neurology from NIMHANS in 1981, currently serves as advisor and senior consultant in neurology, Apollo Institute of Neurosciences, Bangalore. His work is internationally recognized in the field of epilepsy, neuroepidemiology, and neuroinfections. Welcome you, sir. My pleasure to invite Dr. Andrade, Dr. Chitrandan Andrade, former senior professor in the Department of Clinical Psychopharmacology and Neurotoxicology. He served at NIMHANS from 1988 to 2024 and served as Dean Basic Sciences from 2017 to 2020, having completed his MD in psychiatry in 1986. His work has been in the field of theoretical, clinical, and practical psychopharmacology and brain stimulation. He has been ranked and listed among world's top 2% scientists in psychiatry, and we are very proud of you, sir. Welcome, sir. I now hand over to Dr. Rose to introduce and invite the rest of the panelists.
Thank you, ma'am. Dr. Kiran Bhaskar, may I invite you, sir? Dr. Kiran is a professor in the University of New Mexico, US. He completed MPhil Neurophysiology from NIMHANS and in 1996, and then PhD in Neuropathology in 2002. So is currently working on molecular genetics, microbiology, and neurology, research focused on tau pathology in neurodegenerative diseases, specifically searching for the role of neuroinflammation in Alzheimer's and related tauopathies. Welcome, sir. Dr. Basavaraj Sankanahalli. He's done his PhD in neuroscience from NIMHANS in 2004 after completing his MPhil in biophysics in 1997. He is currently the director of Small Animal MRI Core Magnetic Resonance Research Center at Yale University in US. He's a research neuroscientist in radiology and biomedical imaging with an expertise in neurobiophysics, electrophysiology, and preclinical neuroimaging. Welcome, sir. Dr. Harsha. Dr. Harsha is MD Physiology and PhD in Neurophysiology, our own student, completed PhD in 2013. Currently, he is a registrar and professor of physiology in Nita University, Mangalore. Has worked, while he was here he has worked extensively on looking at network modeling and understanding brain function and perceptual experience. And currently now he is in full-time admin with the registrar's cap on his hat. Welcome, Dr. Harsha. Dr. Madhavi Rangaswamy, PhD in clinical psychology. Ma'am also completed MPhil with us in 1993 and PhD in clinical psychology in 2001. She's working at professor in the School of Psychological Sciences, Christ University. Has contributed significantly to the field of addiction research and specific expertise in electrophysiology studies and cognition. Welcome, ma'am. Dr. Naren is still part of NIMHANS. He is currently the medical director of Manoj Shanti, Bangalore. He completed MD Psychiatry from NIMHANS. Worked as professor, as faculty at the Department of Psychiatry, and retired as former professor. He's been working extensively in research in psychiatric disorders. He has expertise in neuroimaging, especially MR and PET, and retinal imaging in psychiatry, with several papers, which I've been fortunate to have co-authored with him. Welcome, Naren. Thank you. Now, Dr. Seema, we will start.
So, welcome once again to each one of you to this panel. I have the not so enviable task of introducing the structure and the format in which we want to conduct this panel discussion to get the most out of this time that is allocated to us. So we would have two segments to this panel. In the first segment, we would be posing or deliberating on 3 questions, only 3 questions, but each question we would be requesting 3 of you to respond. So that would mean about 3 minutes per person. And then we will move on to the second segment of this panel, which is we have labeled as, we have taken the liberty to label it as rapid fire segment. And we would request each one of you to take 1 minute to respond, and that would involve a unique question for each one of you. So here we go. I request Dr. Rose to start with the first 2 questions.
So the first question, the first group, we have grouped 9 of you into 3 groups. The first group is Dr. Srinivas Murthy, and Dr. Satish Chandra, and Dr. Naren. And the question to the group is, while at NIMHANS, what factors helped you to find an optimum balance between clinical, teaching, research, and administrative roles that allowed impactful contributions in all these domains? All these domains you have given contributions equally, which we are struggling. So we want to learn from you how you did it. Sir, Dr. Srinivas.
Thank you very much. I want to recall a little discussion we had, Dr. Prabhu and myself. He moved also in 82 and I also moved in 82. Actually, he moved in 81, I moved in 82. But we are from PGI and AIMS with the national perspective. One of the things that we did talk about at that time before moving here, the solutions for Indian mental health can come only from NIMHANS. That was the purpose with which we came. When we came, what we faced was a reality which was very different. We had a common room half the size of this podium where 4 consultants used to see patients at the same time, and a number of things. But then the thing that saved very much was 3 things: vision, action plan, and implementation. I can give you any number of examples, from the Bhopal disaster to the district mental health program, the national mental health program, then the human rights in the 1990s, and the 2000 related to integrated yoga and other things in the recent last 10 years with the telemanas. I think what saved us was this vision which kept us going, saying that what we have to face day to day is not important. Now, I want to use the next 2 minutes of my time to talk what Seema said about Samatva Yoga Uchayate. This current issue of the JAMA Psychiatry has a paper on gratitude and its effect on mortality and longevity. It is in the latest issue of JAMA Psychiatry. What they found was people who are grateful lived longer, had less illness. Why am I saying this? Because at this moment, mental health is in a crisis, and you need to take it from, this is the director of NIMH, who was there for 10 years, wrote that from mental illness to mental health, we have a crisis. Now, this week, a paper came from social work department showing that 35% of the people in the community are not getting care. Exactly what we found in 1970s, both in Chandigarh and Sakalwada, in 2004, which I'll talk about the paper which we did 2004 about the same. That means, in a way, we have not made much progress, because we have been talking whole of yesterday about patients, not people. My own submission is we need to move from people to patients to people. Now immediately you will ask me, where are we going to go from there? I want to recall yesterday, the director said it in a soft voice, but I'll say it in a little more loud voice. Amrit Kaur at the inauguration said this: there is also the positive aspect of training the normal man of average mental caliber to gain control over his emotional equipment and intellectual powers as to promote the growth of an integrated personality which enables him to function with increasing efficiency and fuller enjoyment of life. She further said that in that 1954, that the institute should set itself a specific program of work for a definite period of time to go ahead and achieve this goal. Now immediately you will say, I started with the gratitude. Is there anything else that is there? Before I do that, I want to quote another psychiatrist, Dr. Arna Haque, who lived in India for 32 years, was a very powerful figure from 1956 to 1988. She said, there is hardly any discovery of modern Western psychotherapy that can't quite easily be confirmed by some percept, parable, or proverb from the writings of Indian religion. In point of fact, she has written a fantastic book called Sources and Resources, where she has looked at all the Upanishads and said they have. So what do we need to do? Where do we go? I say we go here, the logo, Samatva Yoga Uchayate. At this moment, all the problems are related to lack of equanimity in the individual. Time doesn't allow me to elaborate, but I can give you enough evidence for that. So if we want to make Savatva Yoga Uchayate, which is our motto, in our, which is our logo, in the logo, we need to make, similar to yoga, mindfulness and other things popular, this concept of equanimity, being able to not invest in the work and the outcome, but internal stability. And similar to gratitude, which I talked about, similar to forgiveness and other things which have been shown to be effective in HIV, multiple sclerosis, cancer and other things to become a reality. I'm coming to the conclusion. What we need is for a multidisciplinary examination of this equanimity is the goal of all existence, and develop a plan of action at the level of the individual, at the level of the community and all the disciplines, so that we provide evidence to make that a practicable commodity in the India. Why should India do this? Because we have the substratum which allows us to do this, which the West doesn't have it. Secondly, the same way Prime Minister Modi made yoga more popular, if we can give this as a contribution, we would have solved a large majority of the mental health problems of loneliness, old age, drug addiction, suicide, much more than empowering health workers, doctors and other things. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Sir, Satish Chandra, sir.
Thank you for this opportunity to be here on this day, talking about this question. So I wanted to read out that question, how well it is framed and how loaded it is. While at NIMHANS, what factors helped you to find an optimum balance between clinical, teaching, research, and administrative roles that allowed impactful contributions in all the domains? I think it is so much loaded that nobody can answer that question. And I'm sure none of us have that ability. Because there are three adjectives which you have used. One is optimum balance, and the second was impactful contribution, and in all the domains. How can we think about that in all the domains to be impactful? But what is important is NIMHANS is one place where that can be achieved. That is the reason I can emphasize that point. What factors? The factor is the soil. What Dr. Ravi was telling, soil and the seed. He was giving you the information that we are all the seeds on this soil, and the soil is NIMHANS. And the NIMHANS is the most important factor which can help us to divide our time accordingly the requirement according to our needs. But what is important is the vision. The vision is extremely important for any of you who want to march forwards. Without the vision, you cannot think about it. So, when you have an opportunity, you first make your vision statement and look at it, what can be achieved, what cannot be achieved. And to go along with that, so you have to divide the time between the research, between the clinical role, as well as the administrative role, which may come at some time of your life, which is a possibility. But you have to divide all the three things. I cannot say I will be only the researcher, I can be only the clinician. So in this country, at least at this stage, we are not able to afford a 100% research time for any clinician as it stands today. So we need to be wearing different hats at different times. And only then we will be able to satisfy ourselves and satisfy the role which we are occupying. But for this, and an institute like this, what determines is the people who matters a lot. There are wonderful people here in this institute who are working in a basic research. We have on either side here, we have a clinical research and we have a behavioral research, and all under one roof. And that is the wonderful aspect where the people are talking about, and interdisciplinary. And many of the areas I can list out, many neurological conditions where the behavioral aspects are there and basic aspects are there. They are working together. And this togetherness with the vision in front is helping us to work together and achieve a bigger role. Then comes one we have said about the soil, and another is the people who matters. But that itself is not sufficient. You need some more thing, which is a support from either a government or from a governmental agency or from a private funding agency, where the funding is extremely important. We heard about the research in the previous panel. Everybody has an ambition. But how do we solve that ambition? How do we reach that? To reach that, you may have a passion, but as long as you do not have funds, you cannot achieve anything. The funding is extremely important. And that is another important area where we were lucky at that time to get the funding from the government or from the private funding agencies, which includes the ICMR or DBT and DST or some other private agencies. Fortunately now, in this country, a lot of private funding agencies are coming forward, which our director, Pratibha Murthy, has already touched upon yesterday. The private funding agency is also coming forward, which is helping us whether to take the research further. And this was ably demonstrated when in crisis like COVID time we had. And in the COVID time, everywhere the public and private participation was very obviously seen, whether it is in the treatment area, whether it is in the community area, or whether it is in the form of vaccine production, which was done ably, and we showed the whole world that it was possible to battle this out in a shortest period of time. That means where there is a will, there is a way. So we will be able to generate the funds during this time. And of course, the last factor, the time. You must have the time. How do you divide the time? I can tell you that even a smallest child, when start going to the school, the first word you hear is, I don't have time. So where are we? Whether you ask a nurse, whether you ask a technician, whether you ask an administrator, whether you ask a researcher or a clinician, the time is the most important factor. We don't have time. But the time has to be made. There are only 24 hours. There is nothing more. And in this 24 hours, how you can divide and what can be done is the point. And that needs to be according to your priority and what you want to take it further. And when you are able to do that, there are some sacrifices you have to do. There is a sacrifice on one side or the other, whether your family or whether your work. If not, both may have a problem. So that needs to be looked at. And this is another factor which plays a very important role. So under these four important factors should be taken in when we look at the optimum balance between the clinical, the research, the training, and the administration. But I'm sure in an atmosphere under NIMHANS, it is possible. It is possible, and I think many people are successful in this. But of course, you may have to devote more time in certain areas. Maybe a basic scientist work more on research, a clinician work on more on clinical aspect, and then the behavioral scientists have more on clinical plus the community at large. But the community plays a very important role, whichever the field you are taking, and we are answerable to community at large. So that is how we need to divide, and we need to act according to the needs at that time. And I want to end my statement by saying that the vision is not static. The vision is a dynamic one. That means your vision needs to change as and when it is required. And in a country or in a developing, less industrialized country where we are moving very fast forward scale, this vision changes. And we need to adapt according to the need of the community or the society at large. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Nareen?
Thank you. At the outset, I thank for the opportunity to be on this panel. In the 3 minutes, I think 3 factors I would like to point. The first one is the structure. Second is the freedom of thought. Third is the people. The first is the structure, because I was fortunate to be in a department where I was standing on the shoulders of the giants. I was born in 1981, where many of my panelists started their career. So in the department also, because there was already a structure when I entered, I think that is what mainly allowed me to have some kind of a structure to devote my time into both clinical teaching and research. I didn't venture into administration, so 2.5 days of clinical work, 1.5 day of teaching come clinical, because in the ward rounds are the academics, and then you have 2 days of research time. I think that's the freedom of devoted time which allows, because without that, doing any kind of a serious research, especially if it is not purely clinical, anything to venture a little more into that requires definitely a devoted research time. And whoever is outside NIMHANS would definitely agree with me, because last 1 year, I barely get any time to even think about research when I am in the private. And it's the same for anybody who is outside NIMHANS. So I think the structure which was already there and which is there still, and the reputation which NIMHANS has, because like it was mentioned, the funding is something which is nowadays extremely important. So the NIMHANS tag actually allows any entry-level faculty to develop into a researcher. The second factor I feel which helped me to put all these 3 hats is the freedom of thought. Because I have worked in different institutes, I do know that how important it is for somebody who is venturing into a research to have freedom of thought. So if it is a top-down completely, then it if the administration has a research theme in which it is completely top-down, it simply curbs any entry-level faculty's research interest. So again, this is something which is extremely helpful in NIMHANS, that there is no top-down agenda for the research, so that we all have freedom of thought, and there are mentors who are in different roles and different levels that helped me actually to develop into a researcher. So I do think that freedom of thought and freedom of expression, because as a JR also, I did have many arguments with the faculty, and it was never taken in a wrong way. So in that way, I think the ecosystem is something that helps us to look at clinical and training as in the same hierarchy of clinical training and research. And that is something that definitely helped me. The third thing is people. So when I say people, people includes, the first and foremost is the junior residents. I think we are privileged to have a quality junior residents who actually take the major clinical load. Otherwise, if the faculty have to take the clinical load, which is there in the NIMHANS, then we will not have time for any training or the research. So I think the junior residents and the senior residents who take the major clinical load. And second thing is the interdisciplinary nature in which we could freely go interact with anybody and then was able to do projects or papers involving multiple departments. That happens because there is a good harmony within the department as well as outside the department. So I do think these three helped me to wear three different hats: the structure of the NIMHANS and the ecosystem, the people who are present here, and the third thing is the freedom of thought that this place provides to anybody who actually wants to think freely. That's the 3 minutes. Thanks.
Thanks a lot. I think we have got the answer here. All three have mentioned about the vision. That means, you need to plan. And then the soil with the people around, the structure which is already there, the culture which is already there, the DNA which is already there, which can't be altered. And most importantly, the freedom that we have and the gratitude to the residents and the rest of and the other people who are there in the other department is, I think, the way ahead, or that is how the optimum balance can be got. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for that answer. Now, Group B, coming to the second question. I think we are ahead of time. The Group B is Dr. Chitranjan Andrade, Dr. Basavaraj Sanganahalli, and Dr. Madhavi Rangaswamy. The question is, your thoughts on the challenges related to interdisciplinary collaborations. We have departments and we thought that we should break further, but then there is a strong force, magnetic force to keep us together. So challenges related to interdisciplinary collaborations for research and ways to address such challenges. Sir, to you, sir, first.
Hello, everybody. Dr. Rose, I'm the wrong person to ask that question because I did not do very much of interdepartmental collaborative work here at NIMHANS during the time that I was in service. But what I did do was establish a very large research network across the country, currently having nearly 1,000 members, around 930 or 940 members, as well as a small research collaboratory network across the world. And within this network, I identified different people with different skills. Some people good at administrative work, some people good in systematic reviews, some people good in statistics, some people good in data collection, some people good in clinical trials, and so on and so forth. And within this network, I was able to identify different people with different skills, with different abilities in different areas, who could help me initiate and conduct and complete studies in different fields. As a result of which we were able to publish literally hundreds of papers in major journals, including some papers in journals like the JAMA journals. We have a few dozen studies ongoing at the moment, which will also lead to JAMA publications. So I think it all boils down to having contacts. If you have contacts in the right places, whether it is within an institute or whether it is within across the country in different institutes, if you have the right contacts, if you're able to identify people with different skills, and different people do different work, different bits of work. You can't expect a donkey to climb trees or a kangaroo to carry sacks of salt. If different people with different skills do different work, these collaborations can become very efficient, and we've done all this without funding. The previous speakers have spoken about the importance of funding, but when you have people who have different skills in different areas and who are able to work on issues that don't require funding, you can get a lot done. So this is something that I can suggest for people who might want to take their own work forward.
Thanks a lot, sir. Thanks a lot for that. Even without funding, networking within and outside the institute. Dr. Basavaraj, same question, sir.
First of all, thank you for having me here. It's a wonderful opportunity to see a lot of old friends, made new friends, rejoiced, collected all 25 years of old memories. And also very happy to see the rapid progress of NIMHANS past 25 years, both in terms of infrastructure and research development, not only in the clinical side and the basic side too. Especially, I was amazed with the imaging technologies I've developed. They are the cutting edge technologies where we can actually use them for early detection of biomarkers. It's quite amazing. Well, coming to the question, to conduct advanced neuroscientific research, collaboration is extremely important, but it comes with a lot of challenges. So we can address these challenges by different ways. First is we need strategic thinking and communication and resources. The fourth one is publications and patent, ethics, law, etc. So the strategic thinking, first we need to make a good team for a particular project. So not every principal investigator or a project director is expert in everything. So we need to use a convergence approach. Basically, to study the advanced neuroscience, we need to apply medicine, physics, engineering, computer science, statistics, now machine learning, and law, ethics, psychology, everything. So we need to identify the expertise, unique expertise people in each aim, what you are proposing a project, then make a right team. So selecting a right team, sometimes they're not available in the institution. You can go outside the institution, make a collaboration, or you can connect globally too. So once you make a right team, you need to have a personal discussion or discussion by electronically to have a clear idea about the project. This is most important. For example, if you wanted to involve a clinician on board, you need to respect their time, because in US what happens is people dedicate 3 days of clinical work and 2 days of research work. That way they are very efficient. Otherwise, if you just, for the name's sake, if you include them in your project, because of their patient load, they cannot give enough important time for the research, then sometimes it's a big failure. So that's why preparation is quite important. You need to make a good connection with different disciplines. And secondly, the resources. This is the most important one. It comes funding. So funding is problem everywhere. Earlier, a lot of universities and institutes are supporting research funding, and the PI has to always keep on relentlessly writing grants, get disappointed, keep writing. We invest like 40 to 50% of your time on writing grants. So if you can concentrate, if you have less stress on that, we can do more advanced research. And other resources is the infrastructure. We need a proper infrastructure for conducting research. If you don't have infrastructure, collaborate outside. Even if you don't have anything, if you have a very good knowledge, for example, NIH has created a very beautiful model like Human Brain Connectome Project. They invested almost $40 billion over 1 decade to study the high-resolution structural, functional, and metabolic mapping of brain. So these data sets are available. Anybody can approach, collaborate, collect the data, and use the data scientist, use your hypothesis, and get the information. Similarly, there is another project, ADNI, Alzheimer's Disease Neuroscience Initiative, where there is a very good set of data sets. For example, they have a high-resolution data on 200 elderly subjects, 400 MCI, mild cognitively impaired, and 200 Alzheimer's patients with different stages. That way you can use all this current data scientist approach to understand and model the system. So this should not be a constraint. There is globally a lot of opportunities available. And the third is the publication. So we need to publish. Nowadays, all of the big journals wanted the data to be transparent. We need to upload the raw data and the code used to analyze the data. There should be transparency. That's why active involvement is necessary. And overall, I think it took more time. This is the comprehensive view that we can address these challenges.
Thank you, Dr. Basaraj. Ma'am, Dr. Madhavi, ma'am.
I would like to first thank the organizers for having me here. Such an illustrious panel. I'm feeling quite out of place. But when I think of the question that's asked of me, I feel like it's very appropriate, because I think throughout once I set foot into neuroscience, my entire journey has been sort of treading the borders, and somewhere along the line it has been interdisciplinary. I was interested in cellular work and neuroscience, the hardcore neuroscience, but somewhere along the line I'm interested in understanding the human condition. And at my time, I remember it was quite difficult. We have a very disciplinary mindset. The moment you define departments, you are imposing a disciplinary mindset on the entire structure, and people grow into those kind of spaces. So since I have been talking about the human condition and work in a department of psychology, I would like to sort of highlight some of the human factors that would be essential when we are talking about interdisciplinary work and challenges to interdisciplinary work. Now, if we are it's good to be having a strength within your discipline, but how do you communicate with others from a different discipline, different kind of philosophy, different type of tools, different theories, frameworks? How do you communicate with them? That's a soft skill that we are lacking. That I see in my students. I teach undergraduates, postgraduates, and that's something that's not filtering through. And it's that sometimes that stops a good interdisciplinary collaboration short when there is funding, when there is vision, when there is everything. But the individuals who are there at sometimes cannot cross that line. So projects end up becoming multidisciplinary, which is sort of like a train with different bogies attached, and your outcome is just a shade paler than it would be if it was truly hitting the interdisciplinary zone. So this is one of the challenges. The individuals, some sort of a training to be a little more metacognitive, to be able to speak to the other person, and also be secure in one's own sort of knowledge base. A kind of tolerance for ambiguity at some point in time. And these are some of the skills we don't focus on in ourselves. It's all about excellence, right? We want to do well, we want to do right, we want to reach our question. And of course, the goals, when they are set for an interdisciplinary project, the vision must be shared. So from the outset of planning, if you are involving various departments in defining that. So take your time, take your deliberations, form the project. With that comes the sort of an investment from everyone, and that is sometimes helpful. So a lot of the other two speakers who did share a lot of points, I don't want to reiterate that again. So I thought I'll add a facet which was not talked about.
Thanks a lot, ma'am. This is a question which I thought I'll ask because we have 2 minutes extra time and you have answered that. It is very true that we have to create a network, we have to identify correct individuals, and we have to have strategic thinking and convergent approach. But on ground, what happens is that I write a paper, I don't want to give the first authorship to someone else because it is my department topic or it is my data. So I will only be the first author. I mean, that is a reality. So unless we share the vision and we break our disciplinary mindset and heal the communication pitfall with a lot of gratitude and forgiveness, I think this is not going to happen. Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for that answer. Ma'am, over to you.
Thank you. So in this segment, we come to the third and the last question, and then we'll move on to the next segment. So this question is addressed to Dr. Somnath, Dr. Kiran, and Dr. Harsha. So this is about Vision 2047. What measures do you think NIMHANS should adopt as an institute to ensure that our research has meaningful impact in terms of meaningful collaborations with industry academia collaborations, public health impact, and can influence policy? Over to you, sir. Dr. Somnath.
Yeah, thanks very much. I feel a bit like the prodigal son who's coming back, to the institute after many, many years. But nonetheless, I think it's a truism that you can take a person out of NIMHANS, but you can't take NIMHANS out of the person. And that's why I'm here. I'm indeed very grateful for being here. Now, the question you ask, if I can sort of deconstruct that a bit, you ask about, industry academia collaboration. You ask about, having sort of
Public health.
yes, research that's going to have some public health aspect to it, and then finally, what policy differences, can happen as a result of that research. And you asked, what can NIMHANS do, therefore, in sort of moving towards those three areas? So I just step back a bit to yesterday's discussion where the directors spoke about various things and their visions. To my mind, there is a strategic choice this institution needs to make. Either you become or are a Swiss Army knife, right, which does many different things reasonably well. Or do you want, there's nothing wrong with it, it's perfectly a good thing to do. Or do you want to be at the cutting edge of a sushi knife, right? So there are two very different things. And it's a strategic choice that you need to make. Because when you talk about partnerships with industry, the industry is looking at a return on investment, right? They're not going to put money into something. Most industry-funded research, except their own R&D work, right, not in partnership with academia, is not high-risk, high-return research. I think NIMHANS as an institution, besides the routine things that you do, should focus on high-risk, high-return research. That's my personal view. Secondly, you ask about public health. There, I think this institution, again, has an immense role to play, but using approaches which, to my mind, are cutting edge. Now, what do I mean by that? I think public health needs to move from just, providing services to everybody who needs it in the periphery to really looking at risk stratification, right? And today, with the data and the analytics that you have available, it's not difficult to predict outcomes, right? With the right amount of data, using predictive analytics, because I think we are not using our resources efficiently in public health. It's being done, which is often not evidence-based, and perhaps something that is, just based on somebody's fancy. It's like going down with missionary zeal, rolling up your arms and saying it's just a good thing to do. Now, if you continue to not have public health that is evidence-based, I think it's a huge disservice because it's an immense waste of resource. The third piece that you ask about the policy impact of what you're doing. Once again, I think NIMHANS as an institution is immensely well placed because not only is NIMHANS the nodal institution in this country for mental health and neuroscience, it is internationally known, and you have a direct link with the Ministry of Health, both centrally and also in states. So if anybody can produce evidence-based policy, it should be NIMHANS. Now, of course, there has to be a political commitment to this. Now, we know that policies are often not evidence-informed. Policies are often decided on the whims or the political will of someone. But at least as NIMHANS, you can present the evidence, in a transparent manner and make the case why the policymakers should be doing what you think they should be doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for those very valuable pieces of advice. We will move on to Dr. Kiran to address the same question. Yes, Dr. Kiran, please.
I just would like to start by thanking the organizing committee because this is such a wonderful event, and I'm really proud to be with some of my teachers who are on the stage and sharing the panel, and just to see all the old friends and get along. I think the NIMHANS alumni event is a fantastic one, and And I don't think, many institution does this, even my previous alma mater. So that's why I'm really proud of this event and to be here today. So the question was about, what NIMHANS can do to increase the industry and academia collaborations, the public health, and how can it influence the policy making. So most of the experience that I share are based on my sort of 25 plus years of life in USA, So, but I can see that NIMHANS is so very well situated in sort of adapting that some of those concepts which are sort of globally being well accepted, and also come up with their own sort of strategies to address these kind of future sort of industry, academia collaborations, public health, or impact on a policy. So just to highlight, as discussing with Dr. Shankar Narayan Rao, the first thing that I would see to increase the industry academia collaboration is to have a very solid tech transfer team here. I know many of the researchers here and investigators have already, have a fantastic ideas and inventions that have been, changed the healthcare system in the mental health and neuroscience domain. But I think that needs to be expanded, a solid tech transfer thing. For example, even identifying new inventions and disclosure, expecting investigators to submit new disclosures, or helping them partner with a startup company, or even for starting their own spin-off startup companies. I think those things are very important. I know that the NIMHANS can do it because it has a lot of really fine scientists here. I think that's one thing they need to do. And also, I just want to give you an example, because I have a lot of friends in some top-notch universities across US, including Stanford. And one of my colleagues, when I was talking to him, he was telling that if you are a Stanford faculty and if you say that you don't have a startup company, they will laugh at you. So it's like, although our University of New Mexico is at least 25% of the faculty do have their own startup companies, but I think that's what we got to bring in here, because there's a lot of talent, a lot of ideas, and it could be delivering healthcare or coming up with a protocol to diagnose certain things, or even a new surgical method, or things like that need to be protected. And in the next 50 years or so, NIMHANS, including India, will become global leader. I think we got to think about protecting our intellectual property. That's how you can establish a partnership with the industry. And in terms of public health, one thing that US government did when it was a recession in 2007 was it started an institution as a part of the Affordable Care Act. They started this patient-centered outcome research institute. It's called PCORI. I think many of you all know that. So where patients themselves become like a partners rather than at the receiving end, to be part of the research and to take the research to the next level. And this was part of the Obamacare as well, because he was very interested in incentivizing the clinicians or the hospital based on the outcome, patient outcome. I think yesterday it was discussed. I think that was true for research as well, to see how we can partner with patient and patient groups, to be part of our research team. I think that's one thing, I saw there. I think it's many of investigators are already doing that. I think expanding on that would be great. And the third thing, in terms of impact on policy, I know it's every government, every country and their policies are different, and how the new policy implementation happens is different. But I think one thing that we typically do is to partnership with local advocacy groups, like, for example, Alzheimer's Association or ARTC, that's what you have here, and also Epilepsy Society for India and things like that. And those are the people who also, when we partner with them, they help us in spreading the word out and talking to the policymakers and advocating for a new policy change and things like that. So these three things that I could think might impact the future of NIMHANS and address these three key areas.
Thank you, sir. Lots of takeaways. May I request Dr. Harsha, what's your take on the same question? Yes.
First off, wish to express my thanks to the organizers of the conference for giving this opportunity to participate in this Jubilee celebrations of NIMHANS. It's indeed revitalizing to revisit my alma mater, where I've spent some of the transformative years of my life. So thank you for that. Coming to the question of the impact of research contributions of NIMHANS, clearly there's much to be proud about. There are some obvious and tangible examples of how research from NIMHANS has influenced public health and public policy. To mention a few, the contributions to shaping the mental health policies of India, the work towards head injury prevention and management, the COVID-19 responses, and the extensive efforts to raise awareness of mental health issues in India. Clearly, NIMHANS has led the way and has had its impact. If NIMHANS has grown into a strong brand that it is today, it owes much of this to, as much to its impact in research as it does to its impact on clinical services and teaching learning. Today, NIMHANS generates a substantial amount of quality research and scholarly publications. I think it's something like 3 to 4, on average about 3 to 4 publications per faculty per year. And most of these are in very high quality journals. In fact, I think I saw on Skyval that nearly 19% of the publications of NIMHANS are in the top 10% journal percentile, as against the national average of 15. And a quarter of the publications of NIMHANS come from research in collaboration with international collaborators. So all these are indicative of a healthy and productive research enterprise running at NIMHANS. In my opinion, there are 3 factors that underlie this great achievements of NIMHANS in terms of research. 1, the interdisciplinary approach to research. 2, the uncompromising research integrity that is emphasized. And 3, the respect that is there for all types of research interests, the mutual respect that is there between clinical researchers and basic scientist researchers. I think these 3 hallmarks of the research culture of NIMHANS are rare and precious. And the first thing to do to achieve whatever that we want to achieve by 2047 in terms of R&D development is to ensure that these 3 characteristics of research at NIMHANS are nurtured and protected. Looking ahead, there are a couple of areas, a few areas where there is potential for further growth. Some of my co-panelists have already touched upon them. One area is working more towards intellectual property rights and technology development. Institution with the kind of resources, with the kind of talent and with the expertise that NIMHANS has could possibly convert more of its research into usable technologies and products. Greater focus on developing projects which work towards patentable technologies, and then supporting prototype developments and such kind of efforts will probably need to be explored to bridge the gap here. Another area is the industry-academia collaborations with which both Dr. Somnath and Dr. Kiran have touched upon. Many successful institutions across the world have worked with industry to extend their mission, and NIMHANS also could look at that possibility, especially in areas of medical device, health technology, and the emerging area of artificial intelligence and its applications to health in general and mental health in particular. I think NIMHANS has a great opportunity to work with industry in identifying problems which can be helped with technology, in ideating upon solutions for these kind of problems, and translating them into commercially viable products. I know Dr. Somnath has pointed out some issues there which obviously have to be kept in mind. The faculty of NIMHANS could possibly take up more consultation projects with industry partnership, which can develop into even a possibly alternative revenue stream for the institution in the future. Another area which we have an entrepreneur on a panel here, Dr. Narayan. I'm sure that by bringing in changes in our training and bringing in policies that support entrepreneurship amongst faculty and students who are future possible entrepreneurs, it could add an impetus to the impact of NIMHANS on the research front nationally. If I have a minute more, there are a couple of thoughts that I wish to share, which are based on my experience working at privately managed young emerging university in Mangaluru, a tier 2 city. So these are possibly colored by these factors. I think NIMHANS should consider playing a role as a research mentor to other growing academic institutions. NIMHANS, of course, collaborates with many institutions, but I suspect that most of these are already premier, well-established institutions, and it's natural that happens because they desire to have quick and effective results. But working with institutions which are kind of on the lower down on the research capacity curve, lending them a guiding hand and helping them to build the research capacity can make a more sustained impact on promoting research across the nation. In other words, NIMHANSization of research in other institutions, if I may use the term. If India's research footprint has to grow and catch up with the best of the world, clearly the research culture that we all envy and that we all appreciate that we have in NIMHANS has to percolate to other institutions, and mentorship, a role for NIMHANS, is, I think, important to spread this culture across to other institutions too. Another area which I think NIMHANS can extend its impact is through focusing on research on education in India. With its unparalleled focus on everything that has to do with the brain, I think NIMHANS is uniquely placed to contribute to research that can make a positive impact on how we teach, learn across the country. I still feel there is a paucity of biologically informed, psychologically validated recommendations for education interventions, especially in the Indian context. At most colleges across India, choices of teaching learning methods, choices of assessment methods, etc., are based more on tradition rather than on empirical evidence. And I think if NIMHANS can devote a little more time and effort and resources to research on educational methods, on educational frameworks and philosophy, it can make a significant impact in changing policies and practice of education in Indian schools and universities. And that is maybe an indirect but a very strong way of impacting capacity building in India. The final point I want to touch upon is that NIMHANS should consider consolidating its various research and extension initiatives around the Sustainable Development Goals. A conscious effort can be made towards this end. The 17 Sustainable Development Goals that the United Nations have identified provides for a nice framework for evaluating and realigning research and extension activities around these goals. We are trying to do this at the university where I work. And, like NIMHANS, we too have a strong social commitment. We spend about 6% of our budget on institutional social responsibilities. And we have found that using the Sustainable Development Goal framework has helped us to streamline our activities and make it more impactful. And that is something that NIMHANS could also do. So these are some of my thoughts. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you to all three of you. I think we were not only reminded of the ethos of NIMHANS, which have helped us move this far, but also we received lots of very pragmatic, concrete suggestions as to what else we can do to move forward to our Vision 2047. I now request Dr. Rose to move on to the second segment, which is a rapid fire segment. We request each of you to take a minute to answer the questions that are posed to you. Thank you.
I think we are already running late. So I think if less than 1 minute, if you can answer, it will be good. So now let us look at the rapid fire questions. The first question, sir, Chitranjan, sir. Please name one specific topic of research in your field that has been a game changer in the last 1 decade.
It's ketamine, specifically oral ketamine. I was using ketamine to treat patients with major depressive disorder more than 10 years ago, long before Janssen came out with Spravato, that is intranasal esketamine. Intranasal ketamine, intravenous ketamine, and other routes of administration of ketamine are very impractical. So I experimented with using oral ketamine. In the department, we have standardized the protocol for administration of oral ketamine to patients with depression. It's been used in other parts of the country because I've traveled the length and breadth of the country, training departments in different parts of the country on how to use oral ketamine to treat patients. And these protocols are also being used in other parts of the world. They are being published in major journals also. Oral ketamine is a game changer because it can be offered across the table with minimum investigations. It's very safe. It is effective in about 50% of patients. It can take a patient out of depression within a day or two. It can make a patient who is too depressed go to work, be able to go to work from a day or two after receiving the ketamine. It can make a person who has to attend a marriage but can't because of depression attend the marriage. It can help a student go for an examination. Oral ketamine given across the table like this can reduce suicidality in a patient dramatically. Even ECT takes a little time to act. Oral ketamine is something that I think every student in psychiatry across the country should learn how to use, much as students in psychiatry are taught how to administer ECT or how to do psychotherapy. 1 minute.
Thank you, sir. Can we take ketamine before the promotion interview? Okay. Next, ma'am, question to you. 3-word or a 1-line message to the faculty of NIMHANS on work-life balance, despite its challenges. For several of us now, sir, 24 hours is not the denominator. Denominator is 8 or maximum 10 hours. So in that 10 hours, we have to do four domains. So, ma'am, work-life balance.
I think the phrase is an old one, and I feel it's very ill-equipped to handle. Life is life. It constitutes work and it constitutes personal time. So it's about how you balance the personal and the work. And if you can find that within the work, great, you spend all your hours there. So I think it's a change of a mindset if we come with this separate life from work. Work is part of life, right? So you build it that way, then the balance happens in the sort of a right spirit. You have to take people along. So that's what I'd say. Not work-life balance, personal and work balance. Life is whole. These things are part of life.
Thank you, ma'am. That is a good thought. I'll have to think for 2 days to understand that. Thank you. Once, sir, Dr. Kiran, your secret formula to attract funding for research on what you're passionate about.
So if I can sort of summarize my thoughts into one word, it's communication.
Okay.
So I think, just to expand on that, one needs to be able to communicate the significance of the research or what they're proposing to do to get the funding to the reviewer so that they can understand. Because if you can think of where they read your grants or proposals, it could be in metro or it could be late in the night or, somewhere when their mindset is not, they should be able to get the idea. So that's why it's very important to think about how well you can communicate your idea to the reviewer. And also the current understanding at NIH right now is that should this be research done? Can this be done? What happens if this research is not funded? So these are some of the formulas that NIH is implementing nowadays to fund a research. So I think communication and clear science communication to community and also to reviewers is super important.
Thank you, sir. Sir Srinivas Murthy, sir, looking back, what was the research paper that you feel most content, most happiest?
The research that we did in 2002 was the most important one. This was about community care of schizophrenia, cost effectiveness. Very often people ask, what you're doing, does it make a difference? So we asked 3 questions. Is it burdensome for the family when the treatment is not done by taking untreated patients and doing an economic analysis? What is the cost of treatment? And does the cost of treatment provide a return more than what you are putting in? We got a positive answer. We found that there was a considerable economic burden. The treatment cost was much less than the treatment benefit. This was done at the highest international level with international collaboration, published in one of the high-end journals, Psychological Medicine. The second reason why I think it's very important, because I've always been worried about reaching the unreached. That has been my slogan. Partly because when I went to Chandigarh in 72 to do my psychiatry, lots of patients of mine didn't come back for a follow-up. So I took another colleague who was very good in language. I thought it was my problem, that's why they are not coming. And found it is the same. Then when we looked at it, we found the distance to be important. That started the community mental health program, reaching the unreached. So I feel very proud of this particular issue of reaching and also making a difference to the patient at a reasonable cost. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Naren, 2 or 3 places like Nagaraj Tea House in NIMHANS that generated exciting research ideas.
Yeah. I think the first one is the psychiatry wards and the arts theatre, where we used to have the unit academics. Because the small group discussion is the one which actually generated the more clinically relevant research idea. The second one you already mentioned, the Nagaraj Coffee Shop, which is the hub of activity for us to interact. The third thing is the first floor of the psychiatry faculty block, where there is a long corridor. End of the corridor, there is a toilet. So whoever has to go has to meet people. I think the best research ideas to me came walking in that corridor, because while walking, their rooms are open, and we do have an unwritten rule that anybody can enter any faculty's room and discuss. So I think while walking is the time where I interacted with the rest of the faculty and got most of the research ideas. If I'm allowed, the fourth one, which I wish I had, was if we had a very good canteen, I think we would have more and more interdisciplinary research idea, where we could have had more time.
That's a low-hanging fruit, ma'am. We should take it.
But ma'am is here, and I'm sure we'll think about that too.
Thank you. Thank you, Naren. Over to Dr. Seema.
Yeah. My first question to Dr. Basavaraju. Name 3 things, people or situations that have been your source of inspiration as a researcher.
This is a very tough question. There are many places and people I have influenced throughout my life. But first of all,
top 3 maybe which come to your mind.
First of all, being a postgraduate in physics, I had never dreamt that I'll be doing neuroscience research one day. This accident happened 28 years ago when I joined MPhil Biophysics. So I have huge gratitude for this institution, and also thanks for many of the teachers who nurtured me to be a neuroscientist. This is the first inspiration. Secondly, when I was studying my schooling in high school at Siddhganga Math, late Dr. Shivkumar Swamiji is my guru, who always believed work is worship. He preached and practiced. He is the second source of inspiration, which still continues. And the third, recently, my colleague is already a year old. He still works with me at the Yale Department of Radiology and Biomedical Engineering. He still comes to the lab. He's working on consciousness. The paper is going to come soon. These are the 3 people I can...
Thank you so much for sharing that. Yeah. My next question to Dr. Harsha. Looking back, hindsights, looking back, can you tell us just one thing that you now think you might do differently if you were to start afresh as a researcher?
If I was to turn the clock back and start afresh as a researcher, maybe start earlier and persist a little longer. I was almost 30 when I came to NIMHANS to study neurophysiology as an MPhil student. And it was almost a decade later when I came back and completed my PhD. And also, unlike possibly most other neuroscience graduates of, basic neuroscience graduates of NIMHANS. I have, over the years, done increasingly less research with increasing years. So I kind of moved away from research. But having said that, we're really not sure whether we make choices or are choices makers.
Right.
As a researcher, I have derived much satisfaction, much intellectual satisfaction. As a teacher, I continue to derive a lot of emotional fulfillment, especially because, I teach young first-year students who are very enthusiastic and not so cynical yet. So that's very emotionally fulfilling. And now as an administrator, I'm drawing up upon my experiences as a teacher, as a researcher, to try and create those conducive environments for my students and our colleagues to do their best, better than what we did. So I guess it turned out well after all.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So the key is perseverance in various forms. Yes. My next question to Dr. Somnath. One thing that you think that the present generation of faculty must keep in mind in the background of this publish or perish culture?
Yeah, so the most obvious answer to that obviously is that, since you have to check a box, you check the box, as long as you don't get into predatory journals. But really, more seriously, think of that one big idea that you can generate. And where will that idea come from? I think the training in NIMHANS, Ravi mentioned this morning, I think is rather clinically focused at this point in time. So I think there's a need for us to expand our horizons and not just do horizon scanning, but really be trained in critical thinking for trend spotting, right? You need to see where your field is going to be 10 years down the road, not today, right? So trend spotting is a critical thing. And think of the people who may not have anything to do with your discipline. I had Elizabeth Blackburn and Danny Kahneman on my grant, and people were wondering, what do they have to do with what WHO is doing? But I think once you think outside the box and you have that one big idea that you publish in a high impact journal, not simply for the sake of publishing, but which will make a difference to practice, I think that's the way to go.
Thank you, sir. Thanks so much. Our last question to Dr. Satish Chandra. Sir, 3 things that you think NIMHANS as an institute can consider to further enhance excellence in research.
Thank you for that question. Already NIMHANS has started certain interesting things. One of the important things I look forward is the cohort longitudinal studies, which has already come up in the institute, and I see in psychiatry, I see in neurology, we have taken up, which is the way forward. I think they are doing it. It should be further enhanced. And now the central bodies like ICMR is coming out with task force generated, multi-centric, institutional research studies, which they have funding now. An institute like NIMHANS and the faculty should come forward with certain good ideas, as Somnath was telling, to put it for a task force project and make it as a multi-centric data. Already there is stroke, there is multiple sclerosis, there is Ayurveda, and that is integrated medicine, which has come up as a multi-centric study. So that is an important area. The second important thing I will say is about the subjects which is beyond our limit. Maybe engineering as well as legal. These are the areas where we need to collaborate, not only amongst the health institution, but also the management institution, which I'm sure you yourself is managing with IIMB. So such institutions have got a look at various our needs, and that collaborative work will bring in many more things, and especially in the form of the future generation, what they need. And the third one, we have to move with the wind. What is required now? And what is required now in the previous session also we are talking about, that we talk about artificial intelligence now. We are not to shy away from that. And we need to inculcate in our own training and research and how we can bring out. Already machine learning has started way back, about 5-8 years ago. The Rose has only started that. So we have the knowledge and we have the ambition, but that need to be taken further. And biomarker research, robotic research, artificial intelligence research, and of course the genetic and proteomic which is going on already. These are the areas which made you think. The last but not the least, if I'm permitted, so this changes again. So this changes all of a sudden, and we may need to look forward to that change. And when it comes, and we have to hit it hard. For example, the HIV and AIDS, when it came, everything opened up, and there are a lot of research which happened. Secondly, the COVID came in, we have to raise to the occasion. And the COVID had taught us many things. Maybe the telemanus which has come today, or the Zoom platform which we are using today, Echo which we are using today, everything changed overnight. And that has helped us also. So in the adversity also, we have to find something good. And that would help us to take it further. And I'm sure NIMHANS is doing, and NIMHANS has the capability to do all this.
Thank you so much, sir. I think you have summarized everything that we were discussing in the last 1 hour. Nevertheless, I request Dr. Rose to...
Yeah, Dr. Madhavi has to tell.
I have a hope from NIMHANS, and I would like to share it here. I teach undergraduates. I teach the youngsters who come in, start to study. So from that perspective, we talk about using AI. We talk about, we've seen the entire cell phone take over our lives. And then we are talking about how we use these things. But can we go into the space where we try and understand what it is doing to the existing brain? How is it changing our individuals? How is it changing their social interactions? Because what we have out there is a very different population that's emerging. They react differently, they do things differently. And I think, NIMHANS being all about the brain from every facet, we need to probably start a discussion from here, evidence-based, which can actually rise to the level of policy in terms of implementing these things widely. Should we go so fast? Should we go slower on these things? These are very important questions, I feel, when I see the youngsters. And I have a hope from NIMHANS that maybe something like this will begin here, that a good discussion as the sort of a talk. Furthering what all our illustrious panels have been talking about, the community. Looking at the community is very different from looking at clinical populations. The blinkers go differently in that sense. All blinkers are off when you are at a community level. All sorts of variations. So I think I really have a hope from NIMHANS that we will have some directions that's coming out of this wonderful institution. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Sir, Dr. Chitranjan sir wanted to add something.
On this subject, I just have one point to add. In my research network, I have used the philosophy that India is a treasure trove of manpower for research. But India is also a treasure trove of clinical data by the sheer weight of its population. We can leverage this treasure trove if we have high quality electronic health records. And that's something that we can start at NIMHANS. High quality electronic health records, which we can use as the basis for research in future.
Thank you. I think Dr. Aarti will come on to stage and ask all of us to leave. Before that, let me conclude the session. Very thanks a lot, all of you, for giving such very informative and personal advices on where NIMHANS should be in the year 2047. We are, of course, at the crossroads, but we are determined to stay relevant by doing translational collaborative research. Because this is our DNA and this is our soil. We need to have a vision, think strategically, generate equanimity between disciplines, network, get out of the comfort zone, learn to communicate freely across disciplines, divide time based on the vision, and this vision should be dynamic. Make work your life. Be ready to strike when we get the opportunity. Thanks a lot for all these meaningful words. But finally, today, let us nurture, celebrate the structure, freedom of thought, and the people at NIMHANS. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. That actually very aptly summarizes everything, every small nugget of wisdom that we receive. Thank you for sharing all those nuggets of wisdom, which will, I'm sure, inspire us for generations. In fact, we have got lots of food for thought. Unfortunately, we don't have time to open up for discussions or for us to, think over all these again, and they are waiting to, for us to conclude and go forward. I think we have come full circle, starting with what can enabling leaderships do at a place like NIMHANS, and to training and strengthening the training capabilities and the human resources that we generate, transforming human services that we spoke about in the morning, to research, which has bidirectional loops in terms of research and practice, both feeding on to each other. And today, I think the common denominator was, the 2 or 3 common denominators that I can think of. One is, the vision of NIMHANS, vision of each of the faculty who is working towards a common goal, and that dynamic vision, the soil, and also, may I add, the air of NIMHANS. And obviously, the dedication and the gratitude that helps us keep moving forward in our journey to make this a great place for everyone to be around, to thrive, and to do our best. Thank you to each one of you. Thank you so much.
I just should say that the questions were very thoughtfully framed.
Thank you, sir.
And it was very good, and we enjoyed.
We are grateful. Thank you.
A big thanks to both the moderators, as Professor Satish Chandra said, and I would also like to thank all the panelists for their thoughtful ideas on how we can grow research and development at NIMHANS for our Vision 2047. I'd request the moderators to please honor all the panelists with a token of appreciation on behalf of NIMHANS. Request everybody to wait for a group photo.
We're going to form the NIMHANS Alumni Association, revitalize the NIMHANS Alumni Association. So I request all the members to come forward. We'll only take 10 minutes to form an interim committee. So please come forward, don't run away. Sign in the register that is kept out here. We had an association in 2000, but we're going to reform that and have an interim committee. So please come forward before 10 minutes before the valedictory.